Hi, and welcome back to the Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this week is equity release specialist Mark Thompson. The reason why I wanted to get Mark onto the podcast was to just talk about his journey because he's been in the property market, financial services for a long time. Started out he'll talk about it so in conveyancing, legal side of things, moving into estate agency, progressing to become an area director, then changing his career path with regards to looking at them becoming a mortgage broker, but then quickly realised that niching is something he wanted to do, and equity release was something that he loved so much and was passionate about. So I really wanted to get Mark onto the podcast to talk about his passion for his clients, the service that they receive, and how he delivers that, but then also talk about equity release and why that's important in the world of mortgage services moving forward. So let's just get Mark onto the podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Mark. How are you?
I'm great this morning, thank you. Very good form.
Good. Look, settled there with your cup of tea or cup of coffee or whatever it is, ready to have a natter about you and your background and the world into equity release. So you look comfortable sat there, mate?
You need a strong cup of tea when you're going to talk about yourself.
Yeah, you certainly do. Some say would be your favourite subject, Mark, but that wouldn't be me. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, very good. Very good. Very
Good.
busy actually at the moment. It's equity release is just going bananas at the moment.
Good. Keeps
A lot of inquiries. Keeps me out of trouble, as you say. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just going to say that it keeps you out of trouble. So,
Yeah.
I think it's just because we were the idea of the getting you onto the podcast was to talk about your background from equity release into then like you step into then the mortgage world, and then now fully fledged equity release specialist like you've been for several years now. And I just wanted to, because one of the things that I feel it's important sometimes is talking about niching and how you've sort of niched into that world, and whether it was something you always wanted to do, whether your background as a estate agency really helped in terms of mortgage broking into then into equity release, or is it something you sort of fell in? So yeah, really, just first of all, Mark, do you want to just give us a background before you became a mortgage broker, just your background in terms of what you did before, and just so up to the point of becoming a mortgage broker a few years ago?
Well, it's interesting you say that about falling into things because, as you know, I started life in the legal profession really many years ago. And again, I applied for that at the time when jobs were hard to come by. I applied to become a conveyancer. I didn't even know what one was at the time. It was like, well, there's a job. Everybody's struggling to get jobs. I'll apply to become a conveyancer. Got the job. Ended up spending quite a few years with a sort of a small firm that practiced mainly criminal law and conveyancing, obviously property transactions, and did that for a few years, qualified as a legal executive, and then was going to do my final exams to qualify as a solicitor. And one of my clients, who was an estate agent, had 8 offices, said, why don't you come and work for us? I thought, well, that's a bit of a career change. I'd spent my life looking at these estate agency bills and how much they charge for doing, everybody in the law looks at an estate agent's bill and thinks, well, they're charging a lot of money for what they do. They offered me an opportunity to sort of help run their branches. And so I went into that. I did then find out that there's a lot of work involved in estate agency. People, everybody on the outside, estate agent, it's money for all rope. And I never worked so hard in my life. At times I was working 14 days on, not a day off. You're working late, you're starting early. You've been in that environment yourself as well. So absolutely worked like a trooper for years. Ended up becoming, we were taken over, or we sold out, not taken over, but sold out to William H. Brown at the time, a very old established firm, and then taken over ultimately by Sequence. I was an area director with Sequence, or within that field, for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Some would say it's too long. I'd seen a few property crashes in my time, so I'm a bit of a, a bit negative about the way the market's going at the moment. So I'd seen it all in the property market. Well, I thought I had until recently, of course. But so I spent quite a few years running branches. Really enjoyed that. And obviously, we were very heavily involved in financial services. That's how we know each other, of course. And to me, you're assisting people to buy houses and to move by providing them with the finance. So mortgages was a great part of service that we provided. In particular, in my area, we had some fantastic advisors and really, assisting the clients and selling more houses as a result. I still find it strange that there's agents out there that don't really. It's like a car salesman trying to sell cars that doesn't have anybody providing finance for the people who want to buy his cars. It just doesn't make sense to me. Never did. So did that for quite a few years, but then started to get to the point where I thought, well, I've done this, done it, and it is beginning a bit samey. And then you can't carry on working at 24/7, 100 miles an hour. So an opportunity came up for me to sort of take things a bit easier. So I pulled away from that. And then, of course, you and I got talking, and opportunity for me to sort of get back into sort of a client-facing role, really, because the one thing you as a young legal exec and as an estate agent, if you like valuing houses, you're dealing with the clients, you're helping the clients, you really are there with them. As you get more in the management side, the clients become more and more distant, unless they're complaining, of course, and that's when you're there involved and sorting out complaints. So, but it's all about providing a service to clients that really I enjoyed when I was younger. And obviously the mortgage broking gave me that opportunity to sort of go back into the more client-facing role. So that's what I did. Then you say to yourself, well, okay, that was normal mortgages, if you like, call them normal mortgages or standard mortgages. And the one thing why did I get out of that? Or I still do that, but not as much at all now. Very rarely, if existing clients come back to me, they want me to look after them, I will do. But I really am specialising in equity release. And you'd say, well, why are you doing that? Well, for me, that as we all know, when I was an estate agent, I used to think I knew an awful lot. I've been in the industry years. If somebody asked me a question, I could give you the answer. I love the idea that I knew the answers, or most of them. Not all of them. It's arrogant to say you know the answers to everything. You don't. But, I was pretty well versed and knowledgeable in that field. You talk to advisors on the normal mortgage front, and nobody's that knowledgeable because the market changes every minute. I was staggered at, what was happening yesterday isn't necessarily happening today. And I found that quite frustrating, that every time I spoke to a client, I was having to almost go relearn what was going on in the market, because it wasn't because I didn't retain information, it's because that information I got yesterday wasn't necessarily true today. And also because, 100 and odd lenders, there were so many variations on a theme that you could never know the answers. So every time you interface with a client, it was like a new experience of searching for the right products and whatever. Some people love that. For me, having been, not a know-it-all estate agent, but having been comfortable knowing most of what I needed to know about my industry, it sort of didn't quite sit with me. Okay, so equity release comes along, and I look at equity release and think, you know what? I can specialise in that. There are less products, there are less lenders in it. I can get much more knowledgeable about the subject matter, which I like, and I like the subject matter, and I have to interface with clients face to face. You can't do it over the phone. So again, I'm not a phone person in that sense. I'd like to see my clients and meet them. So all those things conspired to make me want to go into equity release. But hey, guess what equity release is doing? It's becoming more and more complex. There's more and more products. It's so keeping up.
It's an ever-changing market.
It's an ever-changing market. So it's no different to in a lot of ways. It is different because there are less criteria that people, again, the frustration for me with ordinary mortgages was people have, it's all about affordability and whether they're earning enough and, whether this bit of income can help and whatever, and dredging through, bank statements and making sure they can, and their income and will this income fit, won't that income fit? And that became, for me, it's not something that excites me. Whereas equity release, yeah, there's still a lot going on products wise. Now it's quadrupled even more since I started doing it. But you're really helping people with life's problems, which is where I started out as a young legal exec. I know it sounds daft, but when I first started as a 28-year-old, 26, 28, in that profession, I was helping people manage their life problems. Which I found strange, by the way, as a young lad in the legal field. I was chucked in, and next minute I'd be sat with a 50-year-old man advising him how to run his life. And I'm thinking, why is a 50-year-old man listening to a young lad of 20? But that's where you learn your trade, and that's where I was, helping people with things. And so I've gone full circle. I'm now back helping people face to face, resolving life issues, and I love it. I really like it. It's nice to help people. It's nice to get that recognition from them. I don't want it from anybody else. I just want it from them. We get some fantastic reviews, and that's what it's about. It's not about the money. Yeah, we all work for money, and yeah, it's nice to have some money that goes with it. But as you know, I'm not chasing money. I'm at a time in my life where I don't chase money. I just chase satisfaction, customer satisfaction, my satisfaction, and doing a good job and something that I enjoy that keeps me out of trouble. And it certainly does. I'm too young to give up working, and I don't think I'd ever want to give this up. Why would I? I enjoy it. So in a nut, pick the bones out of that. But that's my sort of, I don't know how many years in a nutshell. But I do feel now that I'm certainly in a market and an industry that I really enjoy. I like the fact it's fully regulated. I like the fact that you've got to be separately regulated to do it, that not everybody can do it. It's not something you can tamper with. As you know, there are people out there that think, oh, great equity release, I'll do a bit of that. But you can't tamper with it. You've got to know what you're doing with it, and you've got to really want to get immersed in it, I think, to be a good advisor. At equity release. And perhaps that's why I didn't feel as I was the right person for the other role per se. I just didn't want to be immersed in standard mortgages, and some people love it. They're just absolutely up to their ears in immersion in that market, but it wasn't a fit for me.
Mark, I asked you that question, and you come at the end and said to me, pick the bones out of that. And that's what I absolutely love about listening to you and that's why I've just kept quiet for however minutes that's been, just listening to you talk about your experiences and the journey that you've been on over the number of years. And the reason why I sort of said, when you sort of said at the beginning, you was 30 years in that, I was being kind, because I don't think you've not got that sort of, you never had that attitude or the way that you were when you and I worked together. Certainly that it was sort of, time flew. We had good time. We had a great working relationship, and it was a good environment to be in. And I learned a lot from the corporate world on the good side, and also the not so good side as well. But I think there's loads of things I want to talk about on the back of what you said, because I think there's a lot of things that are relevant, certainly to mortgage brokers, and we'll come out to the other end with regards to clearly. It's clear to see that you love what you're doing right now, and I'm looking to see that firsthand. And we talk on a regular basis about the clients and the clients' experience with working with you helping them with releasing equity out of their property, and releasing equity out of their home. But I want to strip it back a little, like something you sort of said, like really sort of early in that conversation, which is something that comes up and is relevant from not from an equity release point of view, but from a estate agency mortgage broker relationship. Because I know a lot of estate agents. You certainly know far more estate agents than I do, and I think some of the estate agents that I talk to and that I know, when they would talk about a mortgage broker, it's very much a third party referral kind of situation going on. Oh yeah, we work with a broker, we send them the odd lead now and again, we don't get any feedback, we get paid a bit of commission now and again, and it's just really we don't know where it goes into that black hole, or we don't get the feedback. And there's a lot of things that we hear from estate agents with regards to their relationship with the mortgage brokers. And again, from the mortgage broker side of the fence, it's like, yeah, well, they send me a lead now and again. It's never a good quality. I can't bother ringing them up. It's just, I don't, it's not a fruitful relationship, shall we say. But you spent far longer in an estate agency mortgage services than I did. And yes, it's nothing to do with the topic of your journey into equity release, but it is relevant to talk about this right now, because we can see firsthand we understood what a great relationship was between estate agency and mortgage services, and how it worked hand in hand to help each other out. And it was a very mutual, respectful relationship. Yes, the estate agency was the front end, it was the shop front and everything else. And that's what generated business, and that's what got clients through the door. But then once that happened, it was very much a partnership of working with the mortgage broker. You look back with fond memories of some of the mortgage brokers that you worked with in your region and in your area as an area director, and you still speak to those people now. And I think that's like important that relationship is there, because you firsthand saw how important it was to the success of the estate agent. Yes, the estate agent was the driver, was the force, was that reason why clients came through the door. But having a good mortgage broker working hand in hand really enhanced the client journey, enhanced obviously the income, because that's what we were all there for. But also it's just from a working environment point of view, everybody working towards the same common goal. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing now you've got to bring into that equation, though, is the clients, because at the end of the day, and the key thing for me, and it's still, I find it, I'll say it as it is. I can't understand how an estate agent, a supposed estate agent, can go out and value somebody's property, talks to them about moving, but at no stage discuss with them the concept of how much it's going to cost, whether or not they can afford it, what the mortgage is going to be, and whether or not they should even undertake that journey before evaluating all those factors. So I'm to use the expression gobsmacked that a lot of people just go out and say, oh yeah, you want a valuation, your house is worth X. Great. That's like me going to see an equity release client and they say, I want 50 grand. Oh, great. I don't want any more discussion with you. You want 50 grand. Why do you want 50 grand? And what is it about the 50 grand? And let's just look at your situation. Let's just evaluate why you want it. When do you need it now? Do you need it later? There's so much more. And as a valuer, when I value properties, I would say to clients, well, let's not put the house on the market yet. Let's talk to the financial people. Let's look at your mortgage situation. Let's see what the rates are like at the moment. Let's see if you can afford to move. Let's evaluate all those factors before we even put your house on the market. And you know what? I won loads of instructions on the back of that, because people thought, do you know, this guy ain't trying to push me to sell my house and just make money from me. He's actually thinking about my situation and whether or not it's right for me and whether or not I can afford it. So for me, it was a no-brainer from the client's point of view to actually assist them and make sure they got the, and if they're not going to move today, they'll move in 3 years' time or 5 years' time. And they came back to me because 3 years earlier or 5 years earlier, I gave them good advice. So I was never pushing to get people. I think people push too much nowadays, don't they, to get something. If they feel like if they can't get something out of you there and then,
yeah,
they discard you and move on. And I hate that when people doing that to me. It's almost like if he doesn't make a decision now, he's not going to buy. And you put people under pressure. You think, no, just leave me to evaluate the situation, make my own decision on it. So A, there's the client in that, but then B, the financial services. You again, how many sales fall through? How many estate agents have sales falling through? Because do you know what? They didn't even evaluate the quality of the buyer. They didn't even understand whether the buyer had got a mortgage. I mean, nowadays they all go, oh, as long as they've got an AIP, then they're okay. Well, and I know that most AIPs aren't worth the paper they're written on. And clients can go and get them online. How many times the clients say, oh, I've got an agreement in principle online. I can borrow £250,000. Can you? Right, well, what information do you put in to the computer for it to tell you that? Because there's an old saying in computers, garbage in, garbage out, GIGO is the old term. So in essence, it's a full understanding. Again, for me as an estate agent, when I was selling houses, you're asking me, I'm duty bound under the Estate Agency Act to protect the interests of my client, which means I'm duty bound also to investigate to the best of my ability the financial position of a potential buyer. So why wouldn't I, on behalf of you who I'm selling for, check that buyer out and make sure that buyer could afford the house in the first place? Because again, the old expression is, there's lots of old expressions, I've got plenty because I'm old, but all buyers are liars. They don't lie necessarily, but they tell you what you think you want to hear. Oh, yes, I've got the mortgage sorted. Oh, yes, I can afford it. Oh, yes, no, you haven't. We used to have a saying years ago, there was cash and cash. Because people used to say, oh, I'm a cash buyer. Well, that's fantastic. And where's the cash? Well, I'm getting it from the bank. The bank will
borrowing it from the bank, yeah,
exactly. From the bank. Well, that's not cash, that's a mortgage. So we had an expression, cash. In other words, oh, you're cash then. It is actually physically cash. So again, it's client centric, because you're providing a service to the client. The seller is your main client. Again, that's the first thing I discovered when I went into estate agency. From the legal side of it, I was in the meeting and I was sat with about 10 estate agents, and they're all deciding on what they're doing and whatever. And I let them carry on for quite a while, and then I sort of piped up and said, "Do you guys know what the word agent means?" And they looked at me as though I was a bit strange, and I said, "No, do you know what the word agent means?" I said, "You're acting on behalf of your client. It's your client makes these decisions, not you. 50% of the decisions you've just made about your process didn't involve any discussion with the client about whether it was right or wrong for the client. Surely the client makes that decision, and then if it doesn't go right, it was the client's decision. As far as I was concerned, I'd say to the client, well, you can do A or you can do B, or you say, these are the risks, these are the positives. It's up to you what you do. It's not my decision to make that." But agents were doing all sorts of things that were making decisions for the clients. So my early days of being in estate agency was, what about your clients? You're there to protect and advise them. So it's all client centric. But then of course, like any business, the more service you provide to your client, the better you are at that, then the more money you'll make as well, because you're going to create various revenue streams, which I make no secret of it. We made a lot of money from financial services. We made a lot of money by providing a great service to the clients who wouldn't have had it any other way.
Absolutely. I think, like I say, that's clear. Like moving forward with where you've sort of changed, not direction, because it's still in the same direction from a client service point of view, but moving into mortgage services, where it's then being a mortgage broker and ultimately onto the equity release. But because again, it's all about the service that the client is receiving, and the client, that service is centric to what you do, and a firm believing that. And that's clear to see from the feedback you get, Mark. That's clear to see from the reviews you receive. That's clear to see as well in terms of how you convert the business into business. So it's not only just looking at the leads that get sent over to you, and like you work with a few estate agents to refer into, you work with other mortgage brokers to refer into, you work within the firm and within the group that mortgage brokers referring to from that point of view. And you take it personally when you don't convert, which is very, very rare. The client, when they sit down with you and you sat down, going through their scenario, going through their situation, doing the full fact find and not cutting corners and getting to know them as real human beings and what their aspirations are and why they're looking to do equity release and what really is the driver to do this, you do that with the client, but do it in the right way. That it's all about the service, and it's really getting to know. We talk about know your client. You really do know your client from a equity release point of view, because you want to hand on heart sit there and know that equity release is right for them. And if it's not right for them, you will tell them it's not right for them. But generally, it is right. If it gets to the stage of you sat down with them, then it's normally you tend to find equity release customers are pretty clued up in terms of the clients have already done a bit of work before you actually get to see them.
Oh, crikey! You underestimate an 80-year-old lady at your peril. You know, they come on and you think, you know, I'll try and educate or provide information. Next minute, I saw the other one the other week, and she was just about as knowledgeable as I was on equity. Some people can spend months and years reviewing it and investigating it before they make decisions, which is fair enough. Everybody's different. And you know, again, I'm getting older, but what is it? Why do we think older people all of a sudden lose the brain or lose their ability to think? Or you know, I'm with a guy. You know, I've got a client at the moment. He's got 5 degrees. He was an industrial chemist. He's not a stupid man. He really, you know, he can understand. He can understand a few spreadsheets and whatever else. And but he just wants information, and he just wants somebody to answer the questions he has, and for him to reach his own conclusion. But yeah, you've really got to understand your clients, and you know, but you've got to want the best for them, and they've got to want to know that you want the best for them. And I think that's the key with any relationship, is that if I speak to anybody, if I speak to a man that's doing a fence for me outside, I want to know that he wants to do a good job. He wants to make me a fence that I'm going to be happy with, and it's going to be a good job. That's primarily what I want him to do. Is you know, it's going to last. It's not going to rot. People want to get a, you know, they have to have confidence in the person they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that only comes from the person they're dealing with having the right attitude and you know, having their best interests at heart from the start. You know,
definitely. I think that's the thing. Like, trust is a big thing with certainly the mature, like certainly the mature generation, which are the people that are looking at equity release, and this is something they have explored and done their research on. Trust is a massive thing for them in terms of, like, for you, seeing them face to face, sat in their own home. Yes, you can do appointments over the phone to have some sort of conversation, and yes, you can use Teams, Zoom, or something virtually, and again, and you do establish rapport very well on that meeting. But I think again, it's like customers, it's about building trust with them, so they know that actually what you're doing is relevant, the question you're asking are relevant, and there is a purpose and the end goal behind all this, which is actually making their quality of life better at a time when actually their quality of life should be better.
Almost definitely, yeah. And sometimes, I mean, they've already, to be fair, people, you said about people knowledgeable, but they've already thought about things and they've already got their own ideas. And sometimes somebody like me just comes along, asks them a few questions and just draws out of them and just draws them to a conclusion, you know, and helps them make a decision on what they're doing. That process, I find, I quite enjoy seeing somebody go through that process. Some of them are not knowledgeable about equity release at the beginning, but they've got their own ideas about what they want in life and everything else. And then you can see them gradually realizing that this thing called equity release or lifetime mortgage is actually going to provide them with such an avenue and opportunity to improve their lives. It's nice to see them go through that process and change their thoughts. And I say that because I don't, as you know, we don't just go in to see people and go, right, well, it's, we're going to have an hour and I'm just going to quiz you. And again, I don't understand, and maybe it's because I talk a lot, but I don't understand how anybody can go and see a client and within an hour have understood them on a life point of view. It's like evaluation. I started, it's valuers go out and they say, I've done 5 valuations this afternoon. I'm like, what? You've done 5 valuations? How do you do that? Well, at least 20 minutes, half an hour each one. I'm thinking, crack, I have a chat and I just do general gets done for 10, 15 minutes. Evaluation for me would last an hour and 10 minutes, as long as they want it, by the way. You don't go over what a client wants.
Yeah.
But to get to understand the client, to advise them correctly, it takes time. And I'm certainly not going to rush them into decisions on their life or moving house or taking equity release or whatever. I'll run at their pace, and again, I think that sits well with them as well, is that they never feel hurried. They never feel like they've got to make a decision in a hurry, because that's when people regret things. And I'd hate to think that somebody, and again, I'm just putting it back to houses, but as an estate agent, do I really want to get somebody to move house and then think that in a year's time they're sat there thinking, do you know what, that was the biggest mistake we've ever made in our life? That was the biggest mistake we ever made, because we rushed into it. We've gone to the wrong area for the wrong house. And because nobody ever actually slowed us up and said, well, have you thought about this? Is this really what you want to achieve? Is that right for you? It's their decision at the end of the right time to make that, giving them enough time to make the right decision and come to the right conclusions.
No, it certainly is, and I think that's the sort of thing with equity release is not it's not a quick process, but at the same time, it's giving that client the time to make sure that the decision is right for them, with your best advice and your help and support to make that informed decision. Because that's the thing, like, they just want to know what their options are. They know what the choices they need to make, and you're sitting down with them and giving that advice, support, and understanding them, and understanding their needs and understanding their goals to then help them to make those choices and decisions. So, and that's important. I think just going back to something that you said before, Mark, in terms of with regards to mortgage broking, and you moved into equity release because there were less products at that time. Absolutely. But then you look at how the world's changed so much recently for the benefit of the client, really, with regards to, again, choices on the product. So then I'm sort of sat here as a mortgage broker thinking, do I want, like, I niche in NHS mortgages, I niche in something else, or I'm local in the community or something like that. Do I want to then have another string to my bow with regards to being able to advise on equity release? What I'm sort of seeing is that no, they're not, but they're wanting somebody that they know and trust, that they're able to refer to. And it seems to be that you're finding that more and more recently, that mortgage brokers are reaching out to you and saying, we've seen what you do, we trust you, we know that you're not going to look at taking the mortgage or do rebroking the protection or anything else like that, which could happen if you didn't sort of refer to an equity release specialist. So we're finding more brokers and estate agents are opening their eyes up to equity release, but they don't want to do it themselves, because, again, they're a mortgage broker for a reason. You've got mortgage brokers that don't talk about protection because they just want to focus on the mortgage, but they refer the protection. But I think there seems to be more mortgage brokers opening their eyes up to the opportunities with equity release, but looking at having some sort of solid foundation referral person, advisor that they can sort of, that they know and trust, to then refer any opportunities to. And that sort of, I'm seeing that more and more. I don't know what your sort of thoughts are on that, Mark.
Oh yeah, a lot of my business is coming from other brokers, for sure. And it's because, it's like anything. I mean, again, if you look at equity release and the legal profession, would you go to a solicitor? Some people say to me, well, I'll go to my own solicitor or family solicitor or whatever. And I said, well, is he experienced in equity release? Well, I don't know. Well, I said, well, really, the industry even recognises that if you go to a solicitor that's not experienced in equity release, if I do something 99% of the time, and then somebody gives me something that I'm going to do 1% of the time, how's that going to work? Because I'm confident doing the 99%, but that 1%, I'm not quite sure what I should be doing. I'm going to have to read up on it. I'm going to have to make sure. So it's almost going to get put to the side. It's going to take, certainly going to take longer. And this is what advisors are like. They don't quite know what they're doing with it, even if they've got the exams. It's like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing with it. I haven't got enough experience in it. And do you know what? I'm great with the 99%. Why do I want to worry with the 1%? I'm better off referring that 1% to somebody that does that's their 99% and working it from there. So there are more and more advisors. I mean, as you say, I always say to everybody that refers to me, quite often clients will come to me. We'll talk about equity release, then I'll talk to them about what the other alternatives are. And sometimes they sort of attach themselves to me and then want me to sort of start giving them mortgage advice on other products. And I have to say, no, you've come to me from Joe Blogs or whatever. Go back to Joe. Joe will help you with that. If that's something you want to do, then Joe will help you with that. That's what Joe's specialising in. This is the position regarding equity release. You make your decisions on what you're doing, you know, and I think it's important that if a broker is referring into me, they know that's what the relationship's going to be. Yeah. It's like other businesses. I would never try and dissuade anybody. If somebody's been kind enough to refer, you know, business to me, why would I try and not honour the agreement and not honour the relationship that they've got with their client? It's a very short-sighted view if you do that. So yeah, and even the FCA recognise that advisors or brokers should not dabble, don't they? I mean, as we know, most people have to do a minimum of 6 a year, and 6 a year isn't a lot of equity release cases to be doing to say that you're competent in it. So
no, it's not. But when you get that inquiry or you get in that situation or the referral yourself, and you start thinking, I don't even know where to start. So you're just talking about a Rio or something like that. But then if that's not the right option for the client, it's where you go from there. And you might be qualified in equity release, you might be able to do equity release. But then at the same time, if you've not kept up with your competency with regards to placing cases, doing your research, your fact finding, and like I say, doing all your sourcing the right way with regards to equity release products, then you could be at the detriment of a client. And that's the last thing that anybody wants, is that the case is not right for the client, which then can be turned into a complaint, which then can open up a whole can of worms. Whereas working with a specialist like yourself, that this is all you do day in, day out. You work with mortgage brokers who refer to you. You work with estate agents who refer into you. You work with all the other avenues of people that refer into you, because this is what you specialize in. This is what you do day in, day out. And I think that's a really important message from a mortgage broker point of view, to work with somebody, A, that you know and trust, but B, as a specialist in this environment, because it is forever changing. You don't want to have anything to come back to you in terms of bad advice and stuff like that. Ultimately, yes, you are responsible for your advice, but then if something happens that doesn't quite work out, then, and that's your client that you referred, then he's then giving a bad reflection on your brand and how you got the client in the first place. So it's just important to get the relationship right and work with somebody that specializes in this, who's talking about it day in, day out, because it is, like you sort of said about the mortgage broker world changing, equity release is certainly changing. You look at things like now and the other things we talk about, where no negative equity guarantee, a certain protection regarding their estate and their inheritance protection. There's just so many different variables with this, that it's important to work with somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, and also has got the time to actually ensure that the process is followed properly, and he's not just throwing it in there. I mean, I was with a broker last week who absolutely mammothly busy. I don't even know how to do it. But they're working 24/7. They're there, maybe like where I was when I was younger. But the hours they're putting into doing mortgages, and they want to offer equity release, but they obviously realise that it's not something they can do on top of everything else they're doing. So they're advertising equity release, but they're just referring it to me. And we talked about RIOs, the retirement interest only mortgages, and I said, well, obviously I'll pass them back to you if you want. Oh no, don't pass them back. We don't want to be buying with RIOs either. You do the RIOs. So if a client wants a RIO, then you do the RIOs. I said, okay, well I'll do the RIOs, and if you don't want to do the RIOs, but again, back to that's a good point in question. The retirement interest only mortgage versus equity release. I was speaking to an advisor or a group of advisors the other day, and one advisor said, oh yeah, I had a client that came to me said they wanted equity release, but I told them no, they don't want any of that, they should just go for a RIO. And that came out of the mouth of the advisor, and I was like, whoa,
on what basis?
On what basis have you said to a client you don't want a lifetime mortgage, you want a RIO? Do you understand a lifetime mortgage? Do you understand the difference between a RIO and a lifetime mortgage? Why would you do that? You talk about complaint. It was because they had no knowledge of the life, or they had the incorrect knowledge of the lifetime mortgage, or because they didn't understand it. It was like, oh, I can do RIOs, so I'll do a RIO for you, but I don't do lifetime mortgages, therefore that's not right for you. Wow, I was just blown away. It was like, oh, dear me. And that's what worries me about any industry and any profession, that there's people out there doing a great job and making sure they look after the customers. And then, unfortunately, in every industry, there's those people that just don't even think further than the nose ends, and they're just thinking about themselves rather than the clients. But you can imagine what I felt when I heard that. It was like, wow. Exactly. I would go to a RIO with a client. If a client came to me and said, I want to do equity release, I don't just go, well, okay, let's do equity release. The first thing I say is, right, okay, well, what have you considered so far? Can you get a normal standard mortgage? Have you looked at that? Have you looked at RIOs? Do you understand RIOs? Do you understand the differences? What is right for you? You make your own decisions based on what's available to you out there in that sense.
Definitely. Mark, thank you so much for we've touched on your journey in the estate agency and how that's been relevant to what you do today. We've talked about a lot about the equity release and the importance of having somebody that you know and trust to refer to as well. And I think that's a sort of clear for me to see, is that if you're not got somebody you refer to and not working with equity release advisor, then certainly something you could be missing out on from a client experience point of view, because he's giving the client another option, but also obviously there's referral fees and stuff like that in there. But then as well, it's working with somebody that you know and trust that can enhance your brand, not be a deterrent to it, and not shy away from it, really, because I think it's clear equity release is only going in one direction, and that is from, we're not going to talk about stats today. We talk about the stats on another podcast, and we talk about equity releases, products, and everything else like in between in the world of equity release. It is becoming far more of a popular product, and it's been popular for a long time, but it's more of the losing the shackles of the old sort of home reversion plans and the negative media that it received back in the 80s, 90s when it was. Whereas now we look at how the products have changed and developed, and I think it's just having another, as a mortgage broker, having that tool in your toolkit, wherever you want to, whatever analogy you want to use, to making sure that if that opportunity arises, you've got somebody that you know and trust to refer to, and just don't bury your hand in the sand with regards to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I did that obviously as a broker before I was an equity release specialist. I used to refer my cases on to somebody that I trusted, and that's how I really got into it. But I wouldn't pass it to anybody that I didn't think would do the job as, confidently and as conscientiously, I think the word I was looking for, as me. And that would have been, that would always be the case. One thing I just finish on, and I know if anybody's still listening to us, probably, you said something earlier on about me being frustrated if I didn't lose many clients, but if I lost a client, I was frustrated, and that is a really good point. And the reason I get frustrated if I lose a client is because, in my belief, I am going to wreck the shop and do the best job ever for that client. I don't believe there's anybody going to, rightly or wrongly, I believe that I will do them the best job possible in their circumstances to get them the best solution. So when I become frustrated is if I think they're going to go away and use somebody else or whatever that isn't going to do that, I feel as though the client won't get the service and that's where I get frustrated. None of us like, and again, it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's because I believe I would have done them a great job. I would have really looked after them. And if you don't believe that in the job you're doing, I don't think you should do the job you're doing anyway. I think whatever job you do, you should believe that you're going to do the best job. And I used to train that when I was training estate agent to say, you should be livid if you lose a customer, because who's going to do that, the best job for that customer? You are. Or you should believe you're going to do that, and you're going to wreck the shop for that customer. So if you lose it, you've lost out, but so have they. And that's the way I see it. So
definitely. And you take that personally. It's clear to see that you take that personally as well, which not always people take that responsibility of going to the end of the earth to get a solution for that client. So definitely not. Mark, brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your journey, talking about experience. And I think just really for me, if there's anybody out there that's not got a referral agreement in place or a partner they're working with regards to equity release, then certainly something to explore. And obviously love people to work with you, because I see firsthand of what the levels of service and the feedback we get from the clients from that point of view with regards to the service that you deliver time and time again. So if people want to reach out to you, get tagged into this podcast, and they can talk to you about equity release and how you would work with them and how you're working with the other brokers that you're working with day in, day out, and the estate agents as well. But just thank you so much for your time, Mark. I really appreciate it.
No worries. As you know, I like talking about myself.
You've not even took a gulp of that big cup of tea during the whole thing.
Oh, no, I need another.
Right, I will let you go and get yourself another cup of tea.
Right, okay, great. Cheers, thank you.
All right, mate. Thank you.
Bye.